everyone, my name is Diigii and welcome to my first World of Warcraft class guide video. As you've probably seen in the title of the video, we'll be covering Shadow Priest today, and the focus of today will be the PvE side of the Shadow Priest. I've been playing Shadow Priest for quite a while now. I've also decided that I want to main the Shadow Priest in Dragonflight, but I've also been playing it in Shadowlands, so I know a bit about the rotation and the things that have been changed with Shadow Priest. So today we'll be covering a lot of topics. I wanted to make this guide not only for the people that are already playing Shadow Priest, but also for the people that just got into Shadow Priest. So we'll start this guide off with an introduction, a little bit about the races, Shadow Priest in general, like what are the most important things you need to know about Shadow Priest in general. I'm going to talk about gear and stats. What are the most important stats for a Shadow Priest? We'll be covering talents, which are the most suitable talents currently for Mythic Plus. Of course, the most important part, the rotation of the Shadow Priest. And to top it off, we'll be talking about consumables, add-ons, weak auras, and a little bit about macros you can use. So, first things first, which race should you play as a Shadow Priest? Well, it doesn't really make a huge difference if you pick one race over another, so I would definitely recommend play whatever you like. Play which race you think looks the coolest as a Shadow Priest, so definitely do that. For the hot plays, I would either recommend playing Goblin or Blood Elf. Goblins have the rocket jump ability, which is an active ability which moves you, throws you forward a little bit, and this ability can be really helpful in some certain raid scenarios or Mythic Plus instances where you have to like get out really quickly and you just press a panic button and you get out of the area quickly. And of course the goblins have the passive ability, which is called Time is Money, and it gives you 1% increase in haste. The second race will be the Blood Elves, which gives you two abilities, a passive Arcane Acuity, I hope it's pronounced that correctly. It gives you critical strike chance increase by 1%, which is of course really helpful, even though critical strike isn't our main stat. And besides that, Blood Elves have the ability called Arcane Torrent, which is an active ability and which removes one beneficial effect from all enemies within 8 yards. So it's really helpful in some certain Mythic Plus scenarios. For the Alliance planes, I would either recommend playing Night Elf or Human. Night Elves have the ability called Shadow Melt, which makes them more like invisible, and it could be like being used as an emergency to leave combat. And of course the Night Elves also have the ability called Quickness, which gives you a higher chance to dodge melee and range attacks. Two racial abilities that are worth mentioning from the humans are the Will to Survive and the Human Spirit. The Will to Survive is an active ability which removes all stun effects. This could be really helpful in certain Mythic Plus scenarios or raids, or even in PvP. The other ability, the Human Spirit, it's a passive racial ability which makes sure you gain 2% more of all secondary stats from all sources. And the secondary stats are Haste, Crit, Mastery and Versatility. Shadow Priest has of course HP bar and a mana bar, as you need mana to cast certain abilities, but we also have an Insanity bar. Currently it's 0 out of 100, which means I have no Insanity. And why do we need Insanity? Because we need it to cast and perform certain abilities. For example, when I hover over my ability called Devouring Plague, which requires 50 Insanity, and I can't cast it at the moment because I don't have any Insanity. So for example, when I cast Mind Flay, you can see like my Insanity goes up. And as soon as I, for example, reach 50 Insanity, I would get like the ability to cast Devouring Plague. So I reached 50 Insanity, or a little bit higher, and now I'm able to cast the ability called Devouring Plague. So when I press 5, you can see the dots on the training dummy, and I'm casting my Insanity. And as soon as you cast the ability, of course, the Insanity will be drained, so I'm losing like 50 Insanity. So that's what you basically want to do as a Shadow Priest. You cast abilities, you gain Insanity, and you can cast certain stronger abilities which require Insanity. So, we now know the basics about gaining and spending insanity. It's time to teach you about the basic abilities of a Shadow Priest. I made it quite easy. I only made a new ability bar with the most common used Shadow Priest abilities, the offensive ones. So we'll start in the top left corner. The first ability is your first dot, damage over time ability. It's Shadow Word Pain. It deals a certain amount of damage, 16 point something K in my instance, over 21 seconds. And when you cast it, it generates 3 insanity. So you cast it, I gain 3 insanity, and a dot is being applied to the enemy. Vampiric Touch is the same. It deals damage over time, 21 seconds as well, and it heals you for 50% of the damage dealt. When I cast it, I gain insanity, and you can see the dots have been applied. Because I have a talent, don't worry about it, that also casts Shadow Word Pain when I cast Vampiric Touch. It's really useful, but we'll get on that later on in the video. Your third ability, Mind Blast. Mind Blast is like a single target damage ability. It deals a certain amount of damage and it generates 6 insanity. This is one of the abilities, if you can, you want to spend them as soon as possible. So now I can't spend any more, so that's a good thing. I'll explain later on in the video with the rotation why that needs to be. Then we have Mind Flay, your fourth ability. Mind Flay is usually being used, or maybe always being used, as a filler. And a filler is an ability that if you cast everything else, start casting Mind Flay. Why? Because Mind Flay is like a decent ability to generate insanity. It generates 12 insanity over the duration. So you can see my cast bar is maybe not very visible, but it goes down and I generate 12 insanity. The cool thing is, the higher your haste is, the faster you cast your Mind Flay. So it means you generate 12 insanity quicker and quicker the more haste you have. Then you have Shadow Word Death. Shadow Word Death is an ability that you can always cast. So I can just cast it on a dummy. Perfect, it's just an extra ability. 20 seconds of cooldown. So you mostly want to use it as soon as you can. But Shadow Word Death also deals 150% increased damage to targets below 20% health. This is huge, of course, because yeah, you deal 150% more damage. So when you use this ability, when you have this ability, you always want to figure out, like for example when you fight a boss, that you have your Shadow Word Death off cooldown when the target is close to 20% health. The next ability is the Mindbender. It could also be based on the talents which you choose. You'll either have a Shadow Fiend or a Mindbender. But a Mindbender is just a little companion that will help you fight. And why is this a good one? Because it generates insanity, so it's really, really good. And also Mindbender profits of like a Bloodlust, the ability to increase your haste, ability that a mage or any other like shaman or evoker can cast. So Mindbender is really good in that situation, but you usually use it whenever you can. Then you have a very strong ability, Power Infusion. It increases your haste by 25%. Haste is one of the most important stats for a Shadow Priest, so this Power Infusion is perfect. It's based on a talent that you pick, but yeah, there's always a talent that always a build that you want to pick Power Infusion. It helps a lot. Then we come to Void Eruption. Void Eruption is like, yeah, I don't know, you want to maybe call it an ultimate ability. When you go into like a certain form, and when you go in the form, you deal a lot of initial damage when you go into the form. But the cool thing is, Void Eruption also changes. And it will change into the ability called Void Bolt. So I'll show you. I'll go Void Eruption, and as you can see, the icon changes, and I got Void Bolt. Very cool ability, because as you can read, it extends the duration of your Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch on all nearby targets. So if you're like 3 targets, and you are in Void form, and you cast Void Bolt, then it will increase the duration of your dots. And that's a cool thing that you can cast Void Bolt, because that means you don't have to cast Vampiric Touch or Shadow Word Pain as often as before, like 21 seconds, maybe it will stay on target for 30 seconds because you casted a couple of void bolts. Perfect. In all scenarios, at least, I pretty much assume so 99% of the situation you want to combine those two abilities. Like they all both have a 2-minute cooldown, so it's perfect to use in combination. Shadow Crest, a very important AoE ability. Shadow Crest is like you hurl a bolt of shadow towards an enemy, but the cool thing is when you cast it towards an enemy, here we go, it will apply dots up to 8 mobs. So this is perfect. That means when you have like a crowd of mobs coming towards you, you don't have to like vampiric touch each and every mob, but you can just throw one Shadow Crest and 8 mobs get the dots. So the next ability is Halo. Halo creates a ring of shadow energy. I'll show you right away. And it gets bigger and bigger. And the cool thing is it does damage to enemies, but it also heals your allies. So it's a little useful healing ability to help in certain raid scenarios or Mythic Plus scenarios to help your healer a little bit, which is perfect. The cool thing about Halo is it only hits people or mobs that have been tagged, for example, in a dungeon. So don't be afraid to use it in certain narrow situations where you think, oh, I might pull like the half the dungeon. That's not the case. It will only hit enemies, mobs that have been tagged by you or by a tank. The last two abilities are your most important insanity spenders. We have Devouring Plague. Devouring Plague does a single target damage, but also a damage over time. So it deals initial damage, but it also deals damage over time. And it also heals you for 50% of the damage dealt, which is really good. So if you have like 2 targets, you usually want to spend your insanity on casting Devouring Plague. Alright, onto the last ability, Mind Sear, your most important AoE ability. Mind Sear, when you cast it on a target, it will deal damage to the target, but also deals damage to the surrounding areas within 10 yards. You need a minimum of 50 insanity to spend Mind Sear. It also ticks like every couple seconds or every tick, it spends 25 insanity. When we walk over here, we have an AoE with dummies. And when I cast, I have 100 insanity right here, and I cast Mind Sear, you can see tick 25, 25, 25, 25, and now it's done. Now I spend all my insanity on the AoE ability, and now I have to make sure I gain insanity again. Next up, gearing and stats, or at least gear and stats for your Shadow Priest. The most important primary stat is intellect. Intellect increases the magnitude of your spells. Well, what's magnitude? It just says the spell damage of your abilities increases with the more intellect you have. So the abilities do more damage. Very important. Your main and most important stat. Besides that, you want to focus on your secondary stat, haste, because haste increases the attack speed and spellcasting speed. The more haste you have, the faster you can cast abilities. So for example, when you cast Mind Flay, it generates 12 insanity over a duration. But the higher your haste, the faster you can cast Mind Flay. So that just means, in basic simple terms, 12 insanity will be generated much faster when you have 30% haste compared to 20% haste. But that's very, very important. So it means you just generate more insanity. The second best secondary stat is Mastery. And Mastery, as it says, your damage is increased by a number of amounts for each Shadow Arcane, Vampiric Touch and Devouring Plague on the target. So the higher the Mastery, the more damage your dots will do. And that's very important, especially when you have Shadow Crash and you can dot up to 8 people, up to 8 monsters. Like the higher the Mastery, the more damage those dots will do. Talent wise, I could tell a lot about talents. I won't go into too much depth, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about the basic or the most important things in a talent tree for a priest. Of course, you have the priest points and shadow points. On the left side, one of the most important ones are definitely, of course, power infusion. You always want to have that one. And definitely for Mythic Plus scenarios, and I would assume like raiding as well, you want to have Twin of the Sun Priestess. So you gain 25% haste for the power infusion when you pick it. But with Twins of the Sun Priestess, when you target a certain friend, you and your friend will both gain the power infusion for 100%. So you both gain 25% haste. So in certain AoE pools in Mythic Plus, it would be nice to help a friend out to make sure they do more damage to the mobs, which is really, really important. Another important priest point ability is Mass Dispel. Because Mass Dispel is very useful, especially in Dragonfight dungeons. There are a lot of bosses, mobs, that gives you dots, damage over time abilities, or something else, like slow movement slow. And usually a healer can only dispel or cleanse one person every 5 or 10 seconds. But now you can help your fellow healer, Mass Dispel your whole team. Because you need to be standing together, you can help out your healer a lot. Especially if you improve Mass Dispel. Cooldown is reduced by 25 seconds. Cast time is reduced by 1 second. And it leaves you with like maybe half a second to cast Mass Dispel, which is perfect. On the left button, it's more like a whatever you prefer. So I won't go in too much details. Because here we have the Halo. I think Halo is a very nice ability. You can either pick Divine Star or Halo. Yeah, the thing is, Divine Star is only ability that goes straight, goes back. And Halo is like a 360 ability, so you always make sure with the Halo, and always make sure that you hit every mob. The last, but also quite important priest ability point is Mind Games. Mind Games changes the way people or mobs cast. So when mobs deal damage to you, they actually heal you. And of course, when the next healing they do, it will deal damage to them. So yeah, as I said, it's a mind game, briefly reversing their perception, which is really cool. And it helps a lot in certain situations when you get like a lot of damage dealt to you by a mob. It reverses it and it will heal you. So when we look at the shadow points tree, there are a couple important ones, ability talents that you really want to have. The first one is the Misery. Misery is when you cast a Vampiric Touch, your first dot, it will also apply a Shadow at Pain. And why is this a good one? Because in combination with the Shadow Crash, the ability you throw to an enemy and it gets automatically dotted, it also works with the Shadow Crash. So you Shadow Crash a group of people, a group of mobs, they all will get the dot, the Vampiric Touch, and because of Misery, they will all get the Shadow at Pain dots cast on them as well. In AoE situations, always want to pick Mind Seer, of course, the most important and powerful ability. Definitely don't want to miss that one. Then we have Void Eruption. Void Eruption, I mentioned it before, deals a lot of damage when you initially cast it. It gives you a Void Bolt. Void Bolt extends the duration of the dots, which is really, really helpful in Mythic Plus situations. Of course, I have to mention this is like the best build, or one of the best builds so far, but it could be changeable, of course, during the season. It depends, of course, when we get our 4 set. So I'll be sure to post another video if I have an updated version. Of course, the last 2 important rows are like the one on the left with the Mindbender, the Screams of the Void, and of course the Idol of Sethune. Well, the last one is maybe the most important one. When you cast Mind Flay or Mind Seer, a tendril, or tendril, whatever it's called, will be cast on the ground and it will help you attack the enemy. Before I explain the last row, the one that I want to mention, I want to go back to Shadow Apparitions. And Shadow Apparitions is a shadowy figure that goes towards the enemy when you have dotted an enemy and you cast an ability called Mind Blast. So you dot an enemy with your Vampiric Touch and your Shadow at Pain, and as soon as you cast Mind Blast, a shadowy figure will move towards the target and it will deal damage. So why is this important? Because we have Idol of Yogg Saron, and after conjuring Shadow Apparitions, gain a stack of Idol Yogg Saron. And when you have 25 stacks, you summon a Thing from Beyond. A Thing from Beyond is like a shadowy figure that stands beside you and it deals damage to the enemies. So when you have a scenario, you dotted 8 mobs with your Shadow Crash and you cast Mind Blast once. It will generate 8 apparitions. When you cast Mind Blast again, it will cast another 8 apparitions. So you're already like on 16 charges and you need 25 for the Idol of Yogg-Saron. So it's really cool. So you'll get it fairly quickly. And of course the thing from beyond does a lot of damage and it helps you a lot. Very important one. So these are like the basics you need to know about the talent tree. Of course I could talk 2 or 3 hours more about the whole talent tree. It could be very complex, but maybe I'll be creating like a more advanced video about why I pick certain talents. And of course I'll be making sure that I'll make an updated video as soon as we get more gear, tier sets, other trinkets and stuff like that. It can really change up the whole talent tree, which is amazing of course. So here we are, we've got the trading damage in front of us and we're going to talk about the rotation. I will be talking about the AoE rotation first because that's one of the most important rotations in Mythic Plus. Especially the higher you get, the more mobs the tank will pull and the more damage you'll do, and that's perfect. Alright, to start things off, first of all I would recommend casting Mindbender when you start a fight, because Mindbender can already do some damage, will already generate insanity for you, even though you haven't cast anything. And of course it's an instant cast, so it's perfect. The second ability will be Shadow Crash, and Shadow Crash will give up to 8 mobs a dot. Because we have the talents, the mobs will get the Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain dot, which is perfect. So 8 mobs will get a dot, and you don't have to manually dot any other mobs in an AoE fight. After Shadow Crash you'll be casting Power Infusion, or PI in short, because PI, Power Infusion, will give you 25% haste. And why do we want to do that? Because when you want to cast the other abilities that will come next, you'll cast them a little bit faster than usual. Because like the Void Eruption and the Halo, it will take some time to cast, so it's nice to have a little bit of a boost to cast them faster. So after Power Infusion, we'll be casting Halo, the AoE thingy ring, which makes sure you'll be doing damage to all the mobs that have been pulled. After that, you will be casting Mind Games. Mind Games is maybe a longer cooldown, or 45 seconds. It's not maybe useful in most fights, but with huge AoE packs, it's always nice to Mind Game at least a mob. So if you get damaged, you'll be doing, you'll get healed as well. So the next ability will be Void Eruption. Void Eruption will give you initial damage. It does a lot of damage. It will also give you Void Bolt. You can cast, the good thing is to cast Void Eruption and right after you want to cast Void Bolt. It's like a 4-second cooldown. So it's off cooldown right away, which is perfect. After Void Eruption, cast Shadow Word Death. Especially when the packs are like fresh, you want to cast it as soon as possible. So hopefully when the mobs are almost dying, you have your Shadow Word Death back again and you'll cast it for, especially when mobs are under 20%, 150% more damage. Perfect. After that, you'll be wanting to cast Mind Blast. You want to get rid of those 2 stacks right away. We have 2 stacks because of the talent choice that we did, but you want to get rid of those Mind Blasts right away. And of course, every time you cast abilities, the insanity bar gets higher and higher, and as soon as you reach 100, you'll be wanted to cast Mind Seer. So that's the only AoE ability you're gonna use to spend your insanity on. Alright, a little side note, when you do the rotation, it could be that you get certain procs, and a proc means that you get an ability for free. And we have 2 procs. That's either the proc for the Mind Blast, you will see it in the bar, it will glow. And you'll get a proc for either a Mind Seer or Devouring Plague. You can either choose between which one you want to cast. So for the AoE, you always want to cast Mind Seer. Alrighty, let's put the rotation to the test. I'll be doing a quick demonstration, a short one. Also be using my awesome trinket. It's just to give me a little bit of a damage boost. But I just want to demonstrate to you to everyone that's watching the video on the damage we can do as a Shadow Priest. So I'll be starting with Mindbender, and I'll be doing the rest of my rotation. So let's get it. Alright, so what was it? Short demonstration. We reached around 150, between 150 and 200k. Yeah, it can even be better if you have the right procs. So of course, when you get the procs, it's sometimes really hard to distinguish, okay, what should I cast, what should I cast? So it's sometimes, yeah, a little bit harsh to make the decision. That's only something you learn over time. And even now I did a little bit of a mismatch in the rotation, but overall, yeah, hopefully you guys get the idea. So when you get like a proc, Mind Shield proc or a Devouring Blade proc, in AoE always prioritize Mind Shield because it does a lot of damage. And the cool thing is you keep generating Insanity even though you get a proc. So most of the times you can cast 2 Mind Shear after each other, and maybe you get another proc from the Mind Blast and you keep casting and casting, the procs keep coming. So yeah, that's just amazing about the Shadow Priest. So let's talk about the macros. There are a couple of worth mentioning macros. The first one is the Dispersion macro. It's just a little bit of a better way just to cast Dispersion. And just make sure, Dispersion. And making sure that when I cast it again, it's being cancelled. So sometimes you want to soak a certain ability. You want to cast Dispersion, get hit, and then you want to get out of Dispersion as soon as possible. So just to make sure you maximize your DPS even in tough situations. Second one, Leap of Faith, is more like a mouse over Leap of Faith. So that means if my friends are in trouble, descending in fire, really useful to Leap of Faith someone out of the fire or the things they shouldn't stand in. And I just can hover over them and I can pull them towards me. Alright, next one, PI, Power Infusion. Why do I have a macro for this? But with this macro, I can just make sure I always cast Power Infusion someone else. We have the talent that we can Power Infuse someone else and we get the benefit as well. So I'll just make sure that in someone else, I'll be Power Infusing always the person when I also cast Power Infusion. The next macro is the Shadow Crash macro. Why do I have a macro for this? Because it's very useful to not have to cast the initial Shadow Crash. So what I mean by that, when I cast the original Shadow Crash, you can see there's like a circle on the ground. And when I use my macro, my Shadow Crash macro, it will automatically cast Shadow Crash where I have my mouse. So which is really, really useful. It saves you like, of course, a second, I don't know, but it's just also very useful. But when I cast my Shadow Crash, you can see it automatically lands where I have my mouse. It's excellent, just what you want to have, of course. So these are about the basic macros that I'm currently using. Here we are at the end of the video. It's been a long journey. I actually wanted to tell and explain a little bit more about a lot of things, but eventually I decided just to stop at the macros to end the video there. And I'll definitely be making more videos in the future. So stay tuned for that. And by all means, I'm definitely not a pro Shadow Priest player. Like in the sense, like I know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm trying to explain Shadow Priest as best as I can. I know some guides can be very difficult to learn. And yeah, I just want to make it quite easy. Because even if you know what to do with Shadow Priest, it can be quite difficult. But on the other hand, it can be quite easy as well. So yeah, that's what I was trying to go for. So I hope everyone enjoys the video. Be sure to also check me out on Twitch. You can ask anything in the stream. I'm okay with that. I'll be maining Shadow Priest, so for any Shadow Priest things, just go to my stream and yeah, come and hang out, I guess. And if you have any tips for me, be sure to leave them in the comments. If you think it was a good video, also leave a comment. even if it's a bad video, just give me a comment. That's totally fine. I'm not a big YouTuber, so I can easily comment on each and any one of you, so it's fine. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you another time. See ya.